Have you ever been in a situation where the person you love most is also the one who hurts you the most? Think about it for a moment. You care deeply for someone. You make the effort. You put in your time, your energy, your heart. But then, they start pulling away. You check in with them, but they don't respond the way you expect. Have you ever felt that sinking feeling in your chest, wondering, did I do something wrong? Or worse, why are they ignoring me when I'm giving them my best? It's confusing, right? The person who should be your biggest source of comfort becomes the one who leaves you feeling lost and uncertain. Why does this happen? Why does the person you love so much sometimes act like they don't even care? Today, we're diving into this painful paradox. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this happens and, more importantly, how to handle it in a way that brings you peace. So let's get started. Have you been there? Is someone you love making you feel like you're invisible? Let's explore why that might be. 1. The paradox of familiarity. Why distance creates desire. Imagine this. You've just bought your dream car. The first few weeks, you're obsessed with it. You wash it every day. You take it for drives at all hours. You can't stop admiring its shine, the smooth leather seats, the sleek design. But over time, things change. You stop noticing the little things that made you fall in love with it in the first place. You get too comfortable, and eventually, it just becomes another car. Now, think about your relationship. When someone is always there, always by your side, you start to take them for granted. You stop appreciating their presence as much as you once did. You stop noticing the little things that made you fall for them in the first place. Does this sound familiar? Have you ever felt like the person you love most is slipping away, even though they're physically still there? This is the paradox of familiarity. The more familiar someone becomes, the more you may unintentionally overlook their value. In relationships, we get so used to someone being a constant presence that we forget just how special they are. This can create a sense of emotional distance without either person intending it. Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic philosopher, teaches us a valuable lesson here. The things you take for granted today could be gone tomorrow. By recognizing the impermanence of everything around us, we learn to appreciate the people in our lives more deeply. We stop taking them for granted and start cherishing every moment with them. So, now that we understand how familiarity can create emotional distance, let's move on to another important part of this dynamic: how love isn't always as loud as we expect it to be. let's talk about how silence and distance don't necessarily mean a lack of love. 2. Love isn't always loud, it's found in the silence. Think about your childhood for a second. Did your parents always say, "I love you"? Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But what did they do for you? They provided. They cared. They supported you when you needed it most. Now, let's shift to your romantic relationships. Sometimes we expect love to be loud, constant, and full of big, dramatic gestures. We want to hear the words, "I love you," every day. We want our partner to show affection in ways that are clear and obvious. But the truth is, love can be quiet. It can be found in the small, everyday actions. Have you ever been in a relationship where your partner didn't say, "I love you," every day, but you still felt loved? Maybe they showed it by making your favorite meal, taking care of things when you were stressed, or simply being there when you needed them most. Seneca, a Stoic philosopher, said it perfectly. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Instead of assuming that silence means a lack of love, we should take a step back and reflect. Sometimes, silence doesn't mean indifference. It can simply mean that love is being expressed in a different way. What if your partner loves you, but expresses it through actions rather than words? What if their silence isn't a sign of distance, but a form of showing care in their own way? So, when you're feeling neglected or distant from your partner, try to consider this. Maybe they're showing you love in a way that's quieter, but no less meaningful. And with that in mind, let's move on to another idea that often plays a role in this complex dance of love and distance: emotional testing. What if the person you love is distancing themselves as a way to test how strong your emotional connection really is? Let's dive into that next. 3. Ignoring as a test, not a rejection. Have you ever had a moment where your partner started pulling away and you felt like something was off? Maybe they became distant, didn't respond to your texts or calls as quickly, or seemed less engaged than usual. You started wondering if something went wrong. You might have even questioned whether they still cared about you. But here's the thing: sometimes this distance isn't about you at all. It's actually a test. Imagine for a second that your partner is pulling away, not because they don't love you, but because they want to see how you react. They might be testing your emotional stability. They want to know if you can handle the silence. Do you panic? Do you beg for their attention? Or do you remain calm, grounded, and confident in the strength of your bond? Does this sound familiar? Have you ever found yourself reacting in a way that makes you feel anxious or insecure just because someone pulled back a little? What if instead of pushing them away with your fear and need for reassurance, you stayed calm and composed? What would that do for your relationship? Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, wisely said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." This is especially true in relationships. When someone pulls away, our minds often race to the worst possible conclusions. But in reality, they may just be testing how stable you are in the relationship. It's an opportunity to show them that you're not dependent on their attention to feel secure. When you don't react with panic or desperation, you show them that your sense of worth doesn't rely on their constant validation. This is how you start to shift the power dynamic in your relationship by staying grounded and emotionally secure, even in moments of uncertainty. So, now that we've explored the idea of emotional testing and how it can affect your reactions, let's dive into something that may seem like the complete opposite: the need for constant reassurance. Why do we feel the urge to constantly prove our love? And is this always healthy for a relationship? Let's explore that next. 4. The need for constant reassurance. Does love need validation? Have you ever found yourself repeatedly telling your partner that you love them, hoping that they'll reassure you in return? Maybe you find yourself needing to say, "I love you," over and over, or doing extra things to prove how much you care, because you're afraid they might doubt your feelings. This constant reassurance can become draining for both you and your partner. But why do we feel the need for it in the first place? The answer often lies in insecurity. When we're unsure about ourselves or our relationship, we seek validation from the person we love. We want them to tell us we're enough. We want them to prove that we matter to them. But here's the kicker. True love doesn't need constant reassurance. Think about the strongest relationships you know. Do they require one partner to constantly ask for validation? Probably not. Those relationships are built on trust and understanding, not on constantly proving love. Seneca, again, provides some wisdom here. True strength comes from within. You must find your value in yourself, not in others' opinions of you. When you start trusting yourself and the relationship, there's no need to keep seeking validation. Your love should be steady and grounded in who you are, not dependent on constant confirmation from your partner. So, the next time you feel the urge to ask for reassurance or validation, ask yourself this: why do I feel insecure? Can I trust myself and my partner enough to let go of this need for constant validation? By shifting your focus inward and building self-confidence, you stop relying on others to define your worth. And when you do that, Your relationship becomes more about genuine connection rather than a constant back and forth of proving love. Now that we've explored the need for reassurance, let's move on to something a bit deeper, the fear of vulnerability. Why do we sometimes pull away from the people we love the most, especially when we need them the most? Let's explore how vulnerability can lead to distance in relationships. 5. The fear of vulnerability. Why we pull away when we need love the most. Have you ever noticed that the people who care about you the most sometimes seem to pull away when you need them the most? Maybe you are going through a tough time, feeling stressed, anxious, or hurt, and you reached out to your partner, hoping for support. But instead of feeling comforted, you felt more alone. They were distant, and you couldn't understand why. Here's a thought. Sometimes the very people who love us the most may retreat because they're afraid of being vulnerable. Vulnerability is scary. Opening up means letting someone in, which gives them the power to hurt you. And not everyone is ready for that kind of exposure. Have you ever been in a situation where you wanted to open up, but held back because you feared being judged or rejected? Maybe your partner feels the same way. They may be afraid of hurting you or exposing their own weaknesses in the process. So, they pull back. This is a common struggle in relationships. But here's the truth. Vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's a strength. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we build deeper, more meaningful connections. And yet, sometimes, our fears keep us from taking that step. The Stoics teach us that emotional resilience is key to growth. Seneca reminds us, emotions are natural, but they should not control you. When you fear vulnerability, it's easy to let that fear dictate your actions. But in doing so, you create distance in your relationships, even when you long for closeness. If your partner is pulling away because of their fear of vulnerability, try to approach the situation with empathy instead of frustration. Sometimes, what they need most is not your judgment, but your understanding. By offering them the space to process their feelings, you can help them open up at their own pace. Now that we've explored the fear of vulnerability, let's move on to another important factor that can create emotional distance, the emotional walls people build to protect themselves. Why do we sometimes feel like our partners are keeping us at arm's length? Let's take a closer look at emotional walls and how they impact our relationships. 6. Emotional walls, built by fear, not love. Have you ever felt like your partner has put up emotional walls between you? Maybe they seem distant, closed off, or unreachable, even though they say they love you. It's frustrating, isn't it? You try to get closer, to understand them, but every time you do, it feels like there's a barrier in the way. The truth is, these walls aren't meant to shut you out, they're meant to protect them. Fear of rejection, fear of being hurt again, fear of opening up too much. These are all reasons why people build walls around their emotions. And the worst part is, even though they're trying to protect themselves, these walls can hurt the very relationship they're trying to safeguard. Have you ever tried to break through someone's emotional wall? How did it make you feel? Did it make you want to push harder, or did it make you retreat in frustration? The Stoic philosopher Seneca teaches us an important lesson here. Be patient with those who fear. They are not rejecting you, but trying to shield their own wounds. People who build emotional walls are often doing so out of their own fear, not because they don't love you. It's a defense mechanism to prevent more pain. So, instead of taking it personally when your partner distances themselves, try to approach the situation with understanding. Instead of seeing their walls as a rejection, recognize that they are trying to protect themselves from getting hurt. If you respond with patience and empathy, you might just be able to help them tear those walls down, one brick at a time. Now that we understand how emotional walls can impact relationships, let's shift our focus to another important aspect: self-reflection. What if the distance in your relationship has less to do with your partner and more to do with their personal challenges? How can self-reflection help you understand the bigger picture? Let's dive into that next. 7. Self-reflection. Understanding the distance. Have you ever been in a situation where your partner started pulling away, and you immediately thought, "Did I do something wrong?" Maybe you blamed yourself, thinking that you caused the distance between you two. It's easy to fall into that trap, right? But what if the reason they're pulling away has nothing to do with you at all? What if the distance is more about their own personal challenges, their own need for space, or their own internal struggles? Have you considered that? Sometimes, people need time to figure things out on their own. It's not always about the relationship. They may be facing their own fears, insecurities, or personal issues that they need to work through before they can fully show up for you. Seneca once said, "We cannot control the actions of others, but we can control how we respond." This is where self-reflection becomes crucial. When you notice distance in the relationship, instead of reacting emotionally or assuming it's all about you, take a moment to step back and think. Is your partner going through something personal? Are they struggling with something they haven't shared yet? By practicing self-reflection, you can gain clarity and perspective. You can understand that actions aren't necessarily a reflection of your worth or the quality of the relationship. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is give them the space they need to sort through their feelings. In doing so, you show them that you respect their journey, even if it means some distance for a while. Now that we've explored how personal challenges can play a role in emotional distance, Let's move on to another difficult aspect of relationships: selfish love. Sometimes the love we experience isn't as unconditional as we want it to be. But how do we recognize when love is more about the other person's needs than ours? Let's dive into that next. 8. Some love is selfish, and that's okay. Have you ever felt like the love you're receiving from your partner is conditional? Maybe they only show affection when they need something from you or when things are going well for them. When things aren't going their way, though, they seem distant or emotionally unavailable. Have you noticed this pattern before? It's painful, right? But sometimes this is a reality of human relationships. Not all love is unconditional. Some people love you not because of who you are, but because of what you can provide for them, emotionally, financially, or otherwise. Have you ever been in a relationship where it felt like love was transactional? You give, and they give back only when they feel like it. Or maybe you felt like they only came around when they needed something, and when they didn't, they were nowhere to be found. This isn't always a bad thing, it's just human nature. Many relationships, even the most intimate ones, can be a bit selfish at times. The key is recognizing it for what it is. Seneca offers valuable advice here. Not all love is pure, and that's okay. He reminds us that relationships, like all aspects of life, are complex. Love doesn't always come with no strings attached. And sometimes that's something we have to accept. So when you notice that someone's love feels more selfish than selfless, it's important not to take it personally. It doesn't mean they don't care about you. It simply means that the dynamics of the relationship are based on their needs being met, not just yours. The important part is understanding this and adjusting your expectations accordingly. Now that we've explored the selfish side of love, let's shift gears a bit. Have you ever noticed that the more you chase someone, the more they pull away? Why does that happen? Let's dive into that next. 9. The more you chase, the more they pull away. Have you ever been in a situation where you're doing everything you can to get your partner's attention? Maybe you're texting them more often, calling them more, planning more things to do together, hoping that they'll notice and come closer. But instead of drawing them in, it feels like the more you chase, the further away they get. Ever experienced that? It's frustrating, right? You're putting in all this effort, and it feels like it's doing the opposite of what you want. But here's the truth. The harder you chase someone, the less likely they are to be drawn to you. It's like chasing a butterfly. If you run after it, it flies away. But if you sit still and let it come to you, it might just land on your shoulder. Think about it. Have you ever found that the more you pursue someone, the more they seem to retreat? Why is it that when you stop chasing, they start coming closer? The law of reverse effort suggests that by not desperately seeking someone's attention, you actually increase your value in their eyes. The Stoics had a deep understanding of this principle. Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "Self-control is the greatest power." When you stop seeking constant validation from others, you become someone who commands respect and admiration naturally. And in relationships, this translates to a healthier dynamic where both people value each other for who they truly are, not just for what they can provide. So, the next time you feel yourself chasing after someone, ask yourself, what would happen if I stopped? Can I find peace and confidence in myself without needing to seek constant validation from them? Now that we've discussed how chasing can create distance, let's take a look at the final, most important form of love, the love you give to yourself. What if the most powerful love you can receive isn't from others, but from within? Let's explore this last concept together. 10. The most powerful love is the one you give yourself. At the end of the day, what if the most important form of love you can receive isn't from anyone else, but from yourself? Have you ever found yourself desperately seeking love and validation from others, only to feel empty when it's not returned in the way you hoped? Have you ever thought, if only they loved me more, if only they showed me more affection, I'd feel complete? But here's the truth: you are already complete. When you learn to love yourself truly, deeply, and unconditionally, you become immune to rejection and disappointment. You stop relying on others to define your worth because your sense of self-worth comes from within. Think about it. How would it feel to know, deep down, that your value isn't dependent on someone else's actions or opinions? How would it feel to be at peace with yourself, whether or not your partner is giving you the attention or love you desire? The Stoics, especially Marcus Aurelius, remind us of this truth. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. When you master the art of loving yourself, you no longer feel like you need others to constantly reassure you. Your inner peace and self-respect become the foundation of your happiness. So, the next time you find yourself feeling frustrated or hurt by someone's actions, remember this. The most powerful love you can experience is the love you give yourself. When you embrace self-love, you'll find that you become stronger, more resilient, and more capable of creating healthier, more fulfilling relationships. Now that we've covered the most important lesson of all self-love, let's wrap things up. In the end, love is complicated, but the wisdom behind it is simple. Choose peace, choose self-respect, and above all, choose yourself. When you do, you'll find that everything else falls into place. Closing thoughts. If this video resonated with you, take a moment to reflect. How can you start practicing more self-love in your life today? Remember, when you love yourself, you are no longer dependent on others to fill the gaps. Instead, you become whole, and that's the foundation for any successful relationship.